Sharrone Blanck has worked in early intervention for 15 years and currently works at HCOE as a special day class infant teacher. She works with 1.5 to 3-year-old children with autism or speech and language impairments. She works in both the classroom and in parent education. Her family moved here from Reno, Nevada 5 years ago. And while in Reno, her husband, who is both white and Jewish, served as the Legal Redress Chair for their local NAACP. Jeff Blanck, who also served as the first white president of the NAACP's Reno-Sparks chapter. Sharrone and her family joined our Humboldt County community and have been Eureka NAACP members for the past 5 years. She and her husband have 2 Black sons, ages 20 and 22, and they are the reason both mother and father have chosen to be active members in the NAACP. She is now serving our community as the Eureka NAACP President. Sharrone, it's all yours.
Thank you. Let me do that. So welcome, everyone. There we go, I posted that. So I just posted in the chat box my name, the mailing address for the Eureka NAACP, and my personal phone number. So that number is for you to contact me if you would like to. Please don't hand that out to folks because I don't generally hand out my personal line to everyone. But I figure if I'm speaking to you, you can have my phone number. So that's how I do it. It's nice, I see some folks that I know, which is always fun. So we have up to an hour and a half, and what I tend to do, I think it works best, is I talk a little bit and then I open it up to questions. I find that these kind of conversations are much more meaningful to people when they're focused around what you are interested in. So that's why I don't talk a whole lot before opening up for questions. So if you put your question in the chat box, I think Kim said she would read them for me because I get really confused going from talking to people to reading in the chat box. So you can either put your question in the chat or you can wait and I will call on people and we can have a verbal conversation. I've spoken to up to 300 people in this kind of forum, so I'm really comfortable with Zoom and managing all of this. So, you know, if we have a problem, we'll figure it out together, but it should go pretty smoothly. I want to, what do I want to start with? So I like in my bio to always start with my career because I really think it informs how I move through the world. So I work I work with people from birth to 3 with special needs. Here in this community, I work specifically with people 18 months to 3 years old with an autism diagnosis or speech and language impairment and their families. I absolutely love my work. I find it extraordinarily fulfilling. It just goes to support my working premise that we human beings are absolutely wonderful and our capacity is just amazing. So I like that to be part of my bio regardless of what I talk about because I really think it informs how I see the world and how I move through the world. So what else do I want to say? So we're gonna talk about the times that we're in right now, and people use different words to describe it. I've changed in the words that I use to describe this time that we're in now myself. I now talk about the people that are gathering on the streets regularly as civil unrest. It's not surprising at all. I'm not really a protest kind of person. That's not the way I present in the world. So I've actually only gone to one protest here in Humboldt County, which is tricky because of my role as president. You would think I would be out there all the time and leading them and having them, However, even though I'm the president of the NAACP, I'm also myself, and we are in a pandemic. So I have real issues with calling people together during a pandemic. And I don't really like crowds. I think crowds of people can, things can happen in crowds, happy crowds, sad crowds, things can just happen. They're not my favorite place to be. So other people are taking those positions, and I'm continuing to do the work of meeting with individuals and forming committees and helping to build the Black community here in Humboldt, the very diverse Black community here in Humboldt together, so that when institutions come to us and say, what is the perspective of the Black community, we actually have the Black community behind us when we speak of from that position. It's very common when you're one of few Black people in the room for people to ask you, well, what's the Black position on yada yada, as if there's only one. And it's best if what I say is informed by the diversity of the Black community anywhere, either in Humboldt or within this country. So that is something I'm working on with some other people to help build that place for the Black community to come together so that we can speak from a larger voice when we're asked to. So yes, I'm seeing this as a time of civil unrest. It makes complete sense. I think it's important to know that there are a lot of peaceful protesters out there, and that it has been documented that there are people putting themselves in some of these groups with the intention of causing harm, either causing destruction of property or causing harm to people. So it's important to realize that there are different elements that are part of this protest. However, overall it's peaceful. Unfortunately, our media doesn't focus very much on peaceful protests that don't have problems. Unfortunately, our media tends to highlight violence and the ugliness that we demonstrate in the world, as opposed to focusing on all the solutions and the good work that's going on. I know a lot of people think that the murder of George Floyd and the murder of Ahmaud Arbery started where we are now, started this unrest that we're experiencing now in the country. And actually, they're not even the latest murders. They're not even the latest murders anymore, but they're more recent murders. Black people in this country have been murdered living their lives, simply living their lives, the whole time we've been here. So within Black families, within Black communities, none of this is new. And that's actually part of why the unrest by Black members of the community is so strong right now, because it's not new, because it happens and it happens and it happens. And the only reason that it's being acknowledged by the broader community is because now people have cell phones. We've been reporting these things from our communities for a very long time. But when people see it with their own eyes, it's a different experience. So it's a different experience.
Sharrone, we did get one comment, and it says, yes, it's hard to believe that that was happening in the 60s. In the 1960s, it's still happening so much today, and thank goodness for cell phones.
And thank goodness for cell phones, yes. So I think, thank you for bringing that up. So I think what I want to do is I want to talk for a little while and then open it up for the questions, including reading the comments below. We're going to try it that way. So thank you for reading that, Kim. I do appreciate it. And I take pauses, so it's okay. That might be different than what you're used to, but I do take long pauses sometimes. I think the murder of Ahmaud Arbery personally hit me extraordinarily hard. This man was jogging in a community and was hunted down by men in a truck and shot and killed. All he was doing was running in the community. You might have heard the phrase, living while black. That's exactly what this is about. It doesn't matter what we do. It does not matter what we do. We can be, Breonna Taylor was sleeping in her bed and was murdered. This young man was jogging and was murdered. A little kid playing in a park was murdered. It doesn't matter what we do. So it was interesting. The first protest that I went to, I decided to go. I had mentioned it to my youngest son who lives here, who's very protective of me. And I said, you know, Max, I'm gonna go to this protest. I'm just letting you know. And that morning came and his girlfriend was gonna go as well. And he called me up and he's like, Mom, he goes, what should I do? Should I go to the protest? And I said, Max, I said, really? No Black person needs to go to this protest. I said, in my opinion, no Black person needs to go to this protest unless in your heart you feel like you need to be there. I said, however, I'm choosing to go to this protest, and then I told him why. But I said, honey, you don't have to go. If you've got a really hot feeling in your body that you need to go, go, but don't feel like you need to. Because what you're doing is you're living your life every day. You're a good man. You are an honorable man. You do good work. You're good to your fiance. You're good to your family. That's all you need to do. So I could see in his eyes that kind of settled him, and he chose not to go. You know, I'm 55. I'm the president of this organization. I'm coming from a different place. I felt like I needed to go, so I did go. And I still feel the same way. I don't think that Black folks actually need to go to these protests unless they need to. I think this is a time for people who are not people of color to step up. I think that's the real difference with this opportunity, is that it's about, and I'm gonna say white folks just as a category, okay? To distinguish between people of color. So it's a time for white folks to step up. It's a time for you to tell your brother-in-law or your sister or your dad, you know what? That's not okay to say. You know what? I saw how you treated that person. Why was that? Why did you feel comfortable treating that person that way? It is time for that part of the community to step up and say, we're done. We're not doing this anymore. If you are in a group that, if you're sitting in a room with a group of people, notice who's in the room. Is everyone about your age? And does everyone kind of look like you? Just notice. And if that's the case, think about that, okay? Relationships are what changes the world. The fact that I know you and you know me, you've been to my house, you know, our kids have hung out together, we've cooked together, That's what changes the world. So I think it's really important not to be overwhelmed by the circumstances that we're in at this time, and to find your place within what is going on. I regularly get overwhelmed. Sometimes I take 3 days off from media. I have completely stopped listening to President Trump say anything because all it does is make me insane. There's no upside. So I don't listen to anything he says. There are times where I take 3 to 4 days off from media in general. Because when I lose the ability to see my place in this, that is a problem. Everyone has spheres of influence. Everyone. And what this moment is calling on us to do is to step into those spheres of influence and speak. You could be afraid. You can do it badly. Your voice can tremble. All of those things can happen. Doesn't change the fact that you step up and you say something. All learning is messy. All learning is messy. If you only learn things that you already know, you're losing out on some really great opportunities. It's really fun to learn something you know absolutely nothing about, like Zippo. You know, no shame in that. It provides opportunity for growth. Learn something about yourself and other people. So notice who's in the room with you when you're having conversations. Notice who's in the room with you when you're in places where you have more power, maybe at your job or organizations you volunteer with. Notice who's in the room and notice who's not in the room. And sometimes just making that statement, oh, I notice all of us are about the same age and we're all, you know, come from this background and we all look like this. Sometimes that's enough to get it rolling. You don't have to have the gorgeous sentence. It's not all on any one person's shoulders. That's why we have community. So as I said, I try to refocus on what are my spheres of influence. So with this position with the NAACP, great example, and then I'm gonna open it up for questions pretty soon. When we moved here, I was asked by I was asked to be on the executive committee of the NAACP here, so I did. And then we had a really tumultuous time where we had 2 presidents that needed to leave for different reasons, and we had no president. And I had served in different capacities. And we came to a meeting and I said, you know, guys, I'm not going to be president, so stop looking at me at the meetings. I'm not going to do this. And then 30 days later, I came back and I said, I definitely want to be president, which seems to be part of my process. It's very strange, and it seems to be something I do regularly. So I was interim president for about 6 months. Then we had an election and I was voted in. So it's been about 2 years that I've been in this position. We're coming up to election time again. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to run. I'm thinking about going back to graduate school. I need to take better care of my health. You know, I'm thinking about all these things. And then a few weeks ago, we had an unpleasant incident come up. And so I was talking to law enforcement and I was talking to leaders in the community and trying to figure out what was going on, and got off the phone and I'm like, damn it, I have to run. Because I do have the ability to make things better here. I have the ability to build relationships with different organizations. I have the ability to interact with the school districts here and to make it better for the Black and Indigenous and people of color within this community. I have an opportunity to work with law enforcement here to make it better for Brown people specifically. with all the things that I don't have the power to step into while our country is on fire right now for multiple reasons, this is something that's available to me, and I feel like it would be disrespectful for me not to step into it. So I've chosen to run again. You know, if I get a year through and I want to go back and do my master's in social work, then I'll figure it out then. But for now, I can do it. I'm good at this role, and I really enjoy it. And it's of service. I mean, it's making a difference in this community. So yeah, I'm going to stay, and I'm going to keep on doing this. And yeah, and it's a real privilege to know that you are of service to your community, which I'm sure a lot of you know, because I'm sure a lot of you are doing that in different ways within different circles that you're part of. So, so what I want to do now is open it up for questions. Oh, wait a minute. No, we'll do that later. I've got some really lovely clips I want to show, but I think I will do that later. We've got how many people? 80 people, that's a lot of people. So if you know how to use, let's see, Kim, can you tell people how to use their little raise their hand?
Sure. So
Okay.
it just depends on the device you have that you're using, but typically along the bottom, there should be a little icon of a hand, and you can use that hand to raise your hand, and then that way we'll know. There's also a thumbs up or clapping. So there's a couple of different icons that you can use, but the raise hand will show up by your photo. And I don't think there is, because I'm a host, I don't know for sure, but there might be another place right by your on your photo. There's a little blue box. There might be a place to raise your hand on there as well. But the chat is a good way for people to ask questions. And I do have a couple I can share with you if you're ready. Okay.
So I'm also going to say, folks, because I know on my computer, I can never find the raise hand personally, but I can see my reactions, the little face, and there's like a clapping and a thumbs up. So if I see one of those, I'll assume that's a raised hand because I can see that. So if something's up in your window, I will just assume you want to ask a question. I want to walk through here a little bit, and then we'll take one from the chat box. Let's see, I don't see any hands up or thumbs up or clapping. Okay, Kim, let's take one from the chat, please.
Sure. So first off, there was also, I just wanted to give you, there was a compliment in here that said that you also make a difference with our high school population. So thank you. And I wanted to make sure. Somebody also said that there's a hand raise function under participants on the computer, and on the iPad it's under the participants. So there's a couple more tips. One of the early questions was if you could share a little bit more about the history of the NAACP and a little bit more about the NAACP here locally, how many people are participating or members of the local branch.
Okay. So the National NAACP was founded, it's either 1910 or 1909. And it came together around the need to address the lynchings that were happening in this country, which happened frequently all throughout the country. I don't know if people know our history well enough, but I remember there was an art exhibit that was going through the country of postcards, and it was postcards from lynchings. They used to make postcards and send them through the mail. It was a family event, like people would bring their lunch and their family and go to lynchings. Actually, someone tell me if I'm making this up, the equal, the gentleman, Stephen help me, Byron's, come on, someone knows this. It's called the Equal,
Brian Stevenson.
say it again, Suzanne.
Brian Stevenson.
And the name of the organization is?
Well, I know it's Just Mercy, but it's
The Equal Justice something.
Initiative.
Okay. Say it again.
Initiative, Equal Justice Initiative.
Thank you, Equal Justice Initiative. And that's why you want many brains around you. Thank you, friends. He actually is, I believe it's him, his organization has these jars about this big with soil in them. And what they are doing is they're collecting soil from sites where they know people were lynched. And they're collecting soil and they're putting plaques down. That is very important. You can't get better until you know the truth. Our country is not going to be well until we are honest. And the honesty starts with this land was taken through genocide of the people who were here first. And the truth is, the wealth of this country was created through enslaving people. Then you can go on to tell the rest of the story. But until we're very clear that this is where we started, we are going to be sick. And I think where we are right now is we are extraordinarily sick because we haven't told the truth. So when there are Black people saying we're done dying, you know, defund the cops, or, you know, we don't need police anymore. When these conversations come up and then there are other people in the community going, why are you saying this? It's because you don't know the history. If you knew the history, you wouldn't be saying, why are you saying this? You might have a different opinion, but at least you would understand where these voices are coming from. The Equal Justice Initiative Project for Racial Justice. Oh, gorgeous. Someone put it in the chat below. And I hope I have the right organization, but I think that's the one that they have the soil there. Sorry, that wasn't the question, the history. So that is how the NAACP was founded, around the lynchings, particularly of Black men. Also, it's very important to remember that the group of people that founded the NAACP were not all Black. I'm also Jewish, and I'm proud to say that there were Black people and Jewish people who were at the beginning of the NAACP, and there are white Christian people as well. So I think it's real important for people to know that. I didn't realize until 3 years ago that there are actually people that think you have to be Black to join the NAACP. Why? Yeah, that was a surprise, but you know, you don't. Anyone can join the NAACP. It's a civil rights organization. If you believe in civil rights, you can join the NAACP. Okay, so, and locally, there we go. The local NAACP was founded in 1952. I don't remember by whom. We actually have, Kim, do we have like emails for people who are here? Okay, there's a really wonderful article that was written about 2 years ago for a historical journal here about the NAACP here. So I will forward you the digital copy of that, and I can send that to you. She did a really good job with that article. But it was started in 1952. I know that for many decades it was held together by just, you know, a couple handfuls of Black families here. I know A.V. Powell was president forever. And he and his family just held this, and the Smith family and the McQueen family. Those three families really held it together for many decades. So, yeah. And what we're doing now, I would say one of the things that has occurred since I've been president, again, comes from the work that I do. I'm real big on building relationships. So we've done a lot of outreach, and we've partnered with a lot of different institutions and organizations in the community. And and it only makes us stronger. So let me think. Right now, some of the things we're doing right now, someone mentioned the high school students. I am one of the community members that is supporting the Black student unions in Humboldt County. That has been an amazing group of mostly young women, some young men, but mostly young women. Let's see, what else have we done? A fun thing is the soul food dinner every year. That is so much fun. We've moved it, so now it is at the end of February. And it's excellent food, homemade food, and it's wonderful company, and there's great music, and it's just a good time. And that's important to have. It's important to just have a good time and eat good food. So we have that. We have a book drive that we do in February where we collect books by Black authors about, I forget all the lines. They're real specific sentences. By Black authors, stories about African Americans, stories about Africa, kind of Black people stuff is the bigger category, but it's said much better than that. We collect those books throughout the community, and then we donate them to different schools. And part of that is, and I realize libraries are kind of old-fashioned, but you know, they're still there. We realize that we need to start at ground level with making ourselves more seen and known. So we donate books to high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools. We have a fully funded essay project that will tap into those resources in schools that we will be starting this fall. And we're gonna present about 6 different Black Americans that students can write about. And we want them to write about that person, but also how that person relates to what's going on in the world now or relates to them as an individual. And the reason we're going to structure it that way is because it's really disrespectful how there's like a handful of Black people that a lot of students know about. We know about Dr. King, we know about Malcolm X. Who else do we know about? We know about President Obama. Then there's sports figures and there's musicians. Maybe an author, probably not, definitely not a scientist. There's huge parts of the community that don't even get touched upon. And so we're helping to broaden that. We also have a Black Americans documentary series. And this last Saturday, we had our first virtual one. Usually we do them in person, but we're living in this time and I'm like, let's try it. All that can happen is it won't work. So we tried it. We had over 50 people in attendance and it was spectacular. So now that I know we can do it virtually, we will continue to do it virtually. If you're on Facebook, like Eureka NAACP on Facebook, you'll find out about our events. Also, one of the first things I put in the chat box was our mailing address and phone number. We also have a website, eurekannaacp.org. If you become a member, you will definitely find out everything that we're doing. We have a constant contact that goes out once or twice a month. It's $30 for a regular membership. And it's a way to really get you connected into the community. There's lots of ways to get involved in the community here and to show up for different parts of the community. One way is by joining the NAACP. That was a long answer. My other answers won't be quite that long. I'm going to call on Suzanne.
I wanted to talk about, or just mention what you were saying about people need to hear the truth of what's been going on in the United States and locally. And one of the things that's starting to percolate is the truth and reconciliation process. Cooperation Humboldt has come the donors have come to the Humboldt Interfaith Fellowship to start that process. I'm very excited because we want to cover all of the oppression and that has happened to not just the indigenous, starting with indigenous and Black people, but there was a Chinese expulsion here. And so to sort of have these stories be told and shared, just as you said, Sharrone, how important it is for us to know the truth, to hear the truth from the people that have been harmed, that we have harmed as white people, so that we can then heal and start creating a beloved community based on that. So I wanted to just put that out there, that it's just starting. Thank you, Sharrone.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we have to tell the truth. I'm reading something in the chat, caught my eye, sorry. Any advice on how to directly support a Black family member who is struggling to process a lot of overwhelming emotions surrounding the recent spotlight on these very real fears and traumas? That is a beautiful question. I think it's important to know, regardless of what is said to you, that every person of color that you know is struggling. Sometimes people ask me how I am and I say fine, and I actually feel guilty. You know, there's different worlds that we move in, and I have to be able to take care of my family. I have to be able to do my job. I have to be able to carry out my functions as president, regardless of what's happening. And I am a Black woman in this community who is very overwhelmed, that I frequently get very frightened. I've stopped looking at any news about the actual lynchings that have occurred. I read about the first one that happened, and I think after the third one, it brought such terror to my soul, because we have Black sons, that I had to stop. And my husband's a news hound, and I said, Jeffrey, I said, let me know if it, just let me know if it happens, but that's it. I said, I can't hear any details about it, because I stop. I just completely shut down. And if I shut down, I can't do the work I need to do. So know that every person of color is living those two parts at the same time, where they have to go grocery shopping and all of that, but they're also, many people in the Black community have family members that have died from COVID or are suffering, have contracted COVID. Yeah, so we're hurting. I think just realize that and be kind. There's a woman, I know such wonderful people. There's a woman that is part of one of my circles in my life that is, has mobility issues. And she called me up and said, I can't go to the protests. I can't do the meetings. I'm gonna cook you food. And I went, I'd love for people to feed me. Please cook food for me. And she has been bringing me food once or twice a week. And every time she does it, my heart, it's like, who does that? That's a beautiful thing. And I think she just makes more of what she's making. So it might not even be a big deal for her, but cooking food and bringing it to me. I never asked for food, but it's such love. So, if you know the person well, do something they love. Make their favorite food, bring them something. And just let them know, I am here if you ever want to vent. I will be quiet and I will listen, and you will have my full attention. Or just say, I think this might be a hard time for you. Let me know how I can be of support. That's the best. I love that when people are like, tell me how I can help you. To me, that is such an act of love. To be humble enough to say, I don't know, but you will tell me. So there's lots of opportunity. Okay, I jumped line. Kim, can you read something? One of the questions,
I sure
friend?
can. Well, it's funny because I got a message privately, and now the question was exactly what you're talking about. What do you believe we can do this week to combat institutional racism?
Okay, this week. Well, I think it's important to know that racism is something, the concept of race is something that we human beings created. And the joyful piece of that is if we created it, we can dismantle it. Race was not even a thing for a very long time. So now I'm going to start talking about resources. Kim, get ready. There is a series that I love that talks about this exact piece that I just brought up, and it's called Race, the Power of an Illusion. So it's a power of an illusion, an illusion. It's a 3-part PBS series, and I think it's exceptional. We've done a couple showings of it and discussions of it, and it talks about race. I mean, it talks about race, and it gives a lot of really excellent foundational information about systemic racism and how institutions were intentionally created to serve part of the community and to keep other parts of the community out. And how that line of race and who is well, the creation of white, because our country created the concept of white or whiteness. So the creation of whiteness and the definition of what is white and how it's moved, who is included in and who isn't included has moved throughout the years. Excellent, excellent, excellent film series. Race, the Power of an Illusion by PBS. Hold on, there's something else I wanted to say. I think I'm going to do this next. I'm also going to show you some books. And Kim, I will, if you can't write these down, I will write them down and send them to you, and then you can send them out to people. So I've got a little stack of books here. Excellent, excellent books. This one is How to Be an Anti-Racist by Dr. Kinde. I know there's a book group going on now online, and NAACP is looking at having a book group around this book starting in the next month or two. Excellent book. One of the premises is either you are a racist or you're an anti-racist. So if you choose to do nothing, let's back it up. The premise is that our country has a foundation of racism, which I think is fair to say. And if you do nothing, you're supporting it. And the only way to not support it is to intentionally take actions. Thank you, Tom. Directly take actions not to be racist. So there is no middle ground, which I love this concept. I know for myself, one of the things I talk about is how we got here as a country is so many of us were apathetic, and I was one of those people. When you just think, oh, it's rolling along, it's fine, I don't need to be involved. Yeah, well, that's part of how we got here. I voted, I definitely voted, but I could have done more and I didn't. And now I am doing more. So another book, Slavery by Another Name. And this one is by Douglas Blackman. My husband's the book reader. Me and White Supremacy. You might not want to do this one first. You might want to do this after you've read some of the other ones. This is pretty graduate level dealing with your stuff. The author is Layla Saad, S-A-A-D. This used to be online free as a workbook, and my friend took it offline, published it, and made some money for herself, which is a lovely thing. So yeah, I wouldn't go to this one first. Let me see. Slavery by Another Name. Let me tell you, the author's last name is B-L-A-C-K-M-O-N, Blackman. And then this one is, his name is Kendi, K-E-N-D-I, Dr. Kendi. Okay. This you can start with. It's best to do this in a group if you can, because we can kind of reinforce our own thoughts when we're working on things by ourselves. You see this, huh? Okay. So, White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. Okay. Oh, this is something. White Rage by Dr. Carol Anderson. And it's A-N-D-E-R-S-O-N. She's got lectures on YouTube that I've watched. And this is an amazing book, and it talks about the pattern in our country of when the Black community starts rising, you know, financially and with rights, and there's growth and stability, how the white, white supremacy culture comes and smashes it. And that's something I think to learn about too, friends. The concept of white supremacy culture. So it's something that we've all been brought up in because of the way this country was established and structured. And it's a mindset, it's a way of being, it's a structure. So it took me a minute to kind of understand the concept of white supremacy culture as opposed to a white supremacist guy with a hat and the whole robe. So it might take you a minute to tease these things out, but it's worth doing. And find someone who's already teased it out to talk to about it. Okay, if you're getting stuck. Also keep in mind, this is not personal. This isn't you're a white person, therefore you're bad. That's another thing I see people doing. And I think we all need to deal with our history, and all of us have, you know, history that, I mean, it's history. We didn't have a hand in it, but it still informs us. We're still existing in the life we have now because of what's happened before. So it's important to know that, not be defensive, just take it as fact, and then what are you gonna do next? Ah, here we go. And then what are you gonna do next? And then what are you gonna do next? Okay, take action. Okay, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, excellent book. So this talks about how there's, well, I can't say this as firmly as I could a year ago, but you know, the Jim Crow doesn't exist in the same form now as it has in the past, but it's still present. That holding back, keeping Black people out, away from opportunity is still very present. And then the last one is The Warmth of Other Suns. And this is a big book. This is a book about the Great Migration of Blacks moving out of the South into the North and West. And it's by Isabel Wilkerson, W-I-L-K-E-R-S-O-N. Okay. Okay, so read those books, How to Be an Anti-Racist. You know, it's about your actions. It's about what you do. It's about sitting in your places of power and going, oh, we all look alike. We need to make sure their voices are here. The premise I move from all the time is, do we look like the people we're serving? Do the people in power look like the people they're serving? That's an easy one. And when you notice that it's, you know, it isn't that group of people with power is not reflecting the people they're serving, say something. And then start inviting people in. Well, I know someone, you know, who would add to this conversation. I know someone who has this expertise. Okay, that was very long. And then I also want to bring it back to person, as far as, you know, breaking down these structures. Again, I think everything moves from relationships. So I think little things like when you see a Black man, smile at him and say hello. It's kind of weird because we're like this and we all look, you know, but you get what I'm saying, okay? Acknowledge Black people when you see them in spaces. You can tip your head, you can smile, you can say hello. You don't have to bring everyone home for dinner. Just acknowledge their presence in a positive way. I think that is huge. My son, who's my youngest son, who's one of my greatest teachers, he's chosen to dress in a way that I would not choose for him. He's my child, that's how this works. So for a while he had long dreads, no big deal, but he wears the saggy pants, you know, he wears the big shirts, and I'm like, sweetness, that's not gonna help. That really is not gonna help. But you know what? Teenagers can dress the way they dress. It's like people can dress the way they dress. So I realized when he was dressing that way and we were having a lot of challenges in our family that some of, you know, these men that I see, these boys that I see that are, you know, tall, skinny, and they're all with their hoodies and you can't see them and their pants are low and they got the shoes and everything. I know how sweet my son is, and he looks like that. And he helped me open up my heart and realize my narrowness, and that I wasn't interacting with these men. I was allowing myself to have hesitation in interacting with these men because of how they looked. And Max helped me understand that these men are men, these boys are boys. And like my son, who is a very sweet person, who is just trying to be a good man in this world and is constantly facing adversity, chooses to look like this, doesn't change the fact he's a good man. And from that exchange with my son, I make a point of smiling and saying hello to every Black man I see, no matter how they look. And consistently, they have said, you know, they nod back or smile or something. Yes, Jane. You're muted. I can't hear you, darling. You're muted. Okay.
My question is, you've, I presume, had this conversation with him about the impact having kids look like that has on you. Does he understand that that's causing him to have a similar impact on other people? And does it want him to change his behavior or not? Or is he just like, this is me, I'm rebelling, I don't care?
We've had many conversations about it, and I actually agree with him. Teenagers dress differently than 55-year-old Black women. You know, I mean, they're teenagers, they're kids. Didn't you, as a teenager, didn't you dress different than your parents? It's okay, it's just clothes. I think I am the adult in the conversation, and I need to take responsibility that I'm being narrow-minded because of how someone looks. And that's the problem.
Yeah, but the problem is, I think that other people are narrow-minded, or it elicits fear. And thus, they don't react appropriately. They don't interact. They shy away. And how do we get that to change, either in the people who have the attitudes about that, or, I mean, we need to educate both sides, that the kids are creating these reactions and that the adults need to understand they need not to have those reactions. In other words, the problem that you're saying,
I understand what you're saying.
we need to greet everyone equally with friendliness. They say the same thing. We should be acknowledging homeless people equally as well, because we walk right past and don't know what to do, so we just ignore them.
Okay.
Can I, Sharrone?
Yes, Suzanne. Yeah.
May I? Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm really thankful that you brought up this issue, Jane. As a woman, it was my awareness of the sexism crap going on in my head and me being a woman that helped me to understand the racism crap that was going on in my head as a white person. And women are told over and over how to dress, how to behave. If only you weren't in that location, if only you hadn't done that, if only you weren't wearing those clothes, and that's why you got raped, and that's why you got assaulted, and that's why you got harassed. And I think that it's useful as women to use that experience of the oppression and that we experience as women to understand what Black people, Indigenous people, people of color are experiencing all the time as well. It's not because of who they are, it's because white people are uncomfortable and translate it into a safety issue. We're just uncomfortable, and we need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
That's
and we
right.
need to get over and see people as people, and that's our work as white people.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one of my questions is the program Equity Arcata and its various sessions and trainings helping? Do you feel like that's a good path forward to have those sorts of intensive full-day training sessions and with people, such as Ronald White has conducted with others from HSU, etc.?
So
That's where I met you.
that is where we met. So I'm going to answer this question, and then I'm going to ask if we can I want to have Suzanne have an opportunity to speak next. So, and I will also stay afterwards if people want to talk some more. Okay. So I'll answer this, Jane, but then I want to let someone else have an opportunity to ask a question.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Suzanne. I thought that was beautiful. And in my conversation with my son, I realized it did have to do with me because he knows how he is perceived. Black people know how we are perceived all the time. So it's not an issue of people not understanding that they look a certain way and other people perceive them a certain way. They understand that. So that's that piece. Yes, there are lots of different ways to continue to do work. So on yourself and on myself, so that we can be better community members to everyone in our community. So what is it, Kumi, is it Equity? There's so many similar names. The first Thursday of the month, what is that one called? Equity Alliance?
No, it's part of the Equity Alliance of the North Coast. It's called Equity Roundtable every
Equity
first
Roundtable.
Thursday of the month. Yeah.
Yes, and if people want information on that, I'm on the email list, so I get it all the time. If they contact Humboldt Area Foundation, can they get on that way?
Yeah, it's on the website, and so is Equity Alliance of the North Coast. There's a link to the website from Humboldt Area Foundation.
Beautiful. So go to Humboldt Area Foundation and look for the roundtable. Those are monthly, about an 1.5 hour sessions. They are facilitated by excellent facilitators, and they deal with all these issues. It's real. If you go to that once a month for a year, you will have learned a lot. They give you a lot of opportunities, and they're wonderful presenters. So that is, there's lots of opportunities to learn. Yeah. I feel a little bit lost. So assuming I answered all the questions, I want Suzanne, not Suzanne. Who did I, Savannah? Savannah, say something, friend. You're somewhere.
Hi.
There you are. Hi.
All right. Thank you. I actually just wanted to not bring it back, but I wanted to make a comment because I really appreciated you bringing up the fact of the clothing. I work with a lot of teenagers, especially young men that wear those clothings and are seen a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And when Jane was saying, how do we kind of, you know, change how they do, I am with you 100%. I don't think we ever need to change them. And in fact, I am reading Anti-Racist right now. And the chapter I just happened to read last night was chapter 7 on culture, where Ibram talks specifically about this and how he grew up in New York and how they went to the baggy clothes and that during this time and how people had viewed him, including a lot of the older people, he said, in his community. And then when he moved to Florida, it was a total culture shock because all of a sudden he's in Timberlands and baggy pants and they're not. But something that had struck me was about my kids. They are very much back, kind of going back to that 90s style of keeping their Air Force Ones pressed, all these things. So we're looking at them, in my opinion, as just baggy clothes and like frumpy, where my kids take way better care of like their shoe. They like stuff them with socks and all kinds of stuff to keep them there, to keep them nice and tight. They like to have them. They like to have their nice belts. And I know that before I've had that lens of seeing the clothes. And now after spending my last 10 years working with high schoolers, especially kids who have been incarcerated and things like that, and they're who I love, I realize they probably are judging the way that we all dress. Everybody does. So I just wanted to say that the clothes thing that you brought up with your son was such an eye-opener for me because it's something I've already thought. And the fact that you brought that into this conversation is something I had actually made notes about in my book last night. And I'm not part of a book club. So I'm so glad you talked about it because I also want to point out that it's for them, a lot of our kids and where that started was a culture. It had nothing to do with trying to be rebellious or I'm going to do, it was literally a culture thing. So I think that's something, a lens that we all need to take perspective of is just like we might wear some sort of cultural piece for, you know, maybe a Hispanic, my dad's Hispanic, the stereotypical is a sombrero or a poncho. That's not, you know, people don't necessarily associate that. That's how a lot of our youth, especially some that are brown and black that I work with, really feel their best is in their clothes. And I worked for a foster care agency for a number of years that was look good, feel good was a motto because a lot of our kids had never had anything new. And that was the style. And I remember going with a couple of social workers and them trying to get them to change how they wanted, but they just wanted those Timberlands or whatever it be. So I just wanted to say that it's not up to them to change, it's up to us.
Exactly.
So
Thank you
for that.
Certainly. Thank you. And I just saw Rita's comment, which I was going to say as well as, you know, in the 60s, it was the long hair. You know, my husband's 11 years older than I am. So he was a teenager and he was one of the long hairs in the 60s, you know, and he got a lot of guff for that. You know, when you're a teenager, you're trying on different things. You're supposed to. That's supposed to be encouraged. And, you know, somehow our society has decided children, teenage children, elementary school children, preschool children are supposed to be adults. And they're not. They're kids. We're supposed to be adults. So, you know, when you have, when I have, and I'm suggesting, you know, as an opportunity, when you're having an issue with someone because of the way they look, check yourself and see what's going on. Because people have the right to look the way they do. There are people that have an issue that I have my natural hair. You know, that's your issue.
Can I ask a question? This is, I don't know quite how to do this hand signal.
Sure. Go
Okay.
ahead.
This is actually a question for you and for anyone. I am definitely a very privileged person, and because I'm semi-retired, I'm not in organizations regularly with other people who look different from me.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, how do I stay motivated to keep waking up? I am reading a lot of books, but I notice I go in and out. You know, I go in, then I go into something that's more like me, more memoir, more fiction, more something. Part of me tells myself, look, you're doing what you can. You can't be on every minute.
Mm-hmm.
You have to also relax, have a life. Another part of me feels like this is urgent. I need to stay on it. And part of privilege is you can step in and step out. That is privilege.
Yep.
And I'm stuck with this dilemma. And I would love some feedback from you or anyone who has sort of been through this themselves.
Tell me what your question is, Louisa.
My question is it okay to go in and out of reading, studying, going to classes like this, going to presentations? I've been in various things that are involving looking at anti-racism, and how important is it to be consistently, regularly, faithfully in it?
I think what you need to answer that for yourself, and I think there does need to be balance, and balance can look different for different people. This also, if this is something new, you have to build up your what's the word, folks? Build up your ability to manage this. This can be very intense. So it's fine to build up your ability to be able to have intense conversations or move in different circles. It's fine to take breaks from that and come back to it. I think deciding why it's important to do is crucial. Like, why should I be doing this? What is the reason I'm doing this? And then finding ways to have, while you're learning, also find ways to have direct, a way of providing direct action as well. So like an example would be, you know, if you're in book clubs and you're going to these classes, what part of town do you live in, friend?
Old Town,
Okay.
Eureka.
So, you know, you might want to join the NAACP. You might want to do the once a month Thursday roundtable. And while you're doing that, you might also contact Doug Smith at the HSU, at the African American Center for Academic Excellence, and say, is there something students are in need of right now? And if they need food, you know, next time you go to the market, you buy an extra pack of peanuts and you bring them to HSU and you donate them to the center there. Dr. Kente Johnson at CR is my contact there, and they are always collecting things for students there. So they're one of the things they're collecting are well, you know, still in well condition, but used suits and business clothes, so that when students go out for interviews, they have clothes. You know, so find a way to take direct action while you're building up your knowledge and all of that. How does that sound?
It sounds helpful. It's not exactly what I'm struggling with. I like the idea of doing some direct action, because part of my issue is I feel I'm educating myself, but it feels sort of passive.
Yeah.
I mean, I think self-education is important, but it's only
Right.
one piece. So I do like the direct action ideas. Thank you.
You're welcome. I think it's important to have a way of having direct action even when you're learning, even when you're at the beginning of a learning process. Kim, why don't you read a question, and then I'm going to take a person with their hand up after that.
I don't see a lot of questions. I do see some good comments, and lots of links are being put.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah. Thanks, Kim.
Okay.
Yeah,
So should I call on someone?
Yeah, let's let, Bird has had her hand up for a while.
I was going to call on Bird. Hi, Bird.
Unmute myself. Hi. Thank
Hi.
you so much for doing this, Sharrone.
You're welcome.
Appreciate so much of what you're saying. I have a question. I grew up in the 50s when the education was a big thing, and the term separate but equal was being trashed, saying that it couldn't be equal and that integration was the final answer.
Mm-hmm.
Over the years, but particularly in the last, I would say the last 10 years, I have seen groups that are from Black and people of color wanting to be in their own group and not wanting to be integrated into another group. And I know you said the NAACP is open to everyone. And it crossed my mind, did people of color dislike that or like it? And I wondered if you would comment about the idea of how we reconcile giving people their own space where they feel comfortable with people like themselves, and also integrating our society so that we treat everyone the same.
I think there's a really, thank you, Bird. I think there's a really big difference between being told that you're going to mix with other people and deciding for yourself that you're going to either mix with other people or stay with people that you have cultural connection with. I think it's very important for people to be with their people however they identify them. So, you know, I'm a Black woman, I'm also a Jewish woman, and I'm a woman. So, you know, I got lots of different bits and pieces. And there, as we all know, there is a strength, a working out of identity, a sharing and ease of being with your people, however you define them. And again, I think a big difference is, am I choosing to do this or am I being told to do this? We had a film last Saturday, and I remember someone talking about segregation and how this was a Black person and how they were told that they were getting on a bus and traveling all this distance to these white schools. There was no choice in that matter, you know? So I think the choosing of the community you're in is important as opposed to being told. And I think all of us can understand why it's important to be with your people, however that's identified at the time. You know, I'm part of a group right now of other Black folks that we're, as I mentioned before, we're trying to create a space for members of the Black community in Humboldt to get together and have a place to be with each other. So I think that's an important piece of it. And I think asking and just being respectful of people's choices is really important. You know, if someone says we need to be to ourselves, you say, thank you for sharing that with me. If they say, well, we want to work with other people in this way, great, we can work in this way. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, that autonomy is very important.
Yeah.
Let me see if anyone else with their hands up that I'm missing here. This is lovely.
Sure, and I did find, I have had a couple questions sent to me privately, and one question that came up is, it feels like the community here in Humboldt County of Black people is not very big. And so some people were asking, you know, what kind of numbers are we talking about? Like, is the NAACP here mostly Black people, or they're like mostly white people? I mean, I think people are just trying to figure out like what kind of numbers are we talking about?
Okay. It's 1:17 just to do a time check, and we will be done at 1:30. I was informed recently there's about 1,600 Black folks in Humboldt. And this is a real data person, so I'm going to trust his number. The NAACP here, I know the people that show up to meetings tend to be white by a large percentage, and I would assume our roster is the same, that we're mostly white folks. One of the things we started doing in March, April, March, because what I noticed was happening was a new Black person would come to a meeting once and then not come back. And that was happening regularly. And so one of the things we started doing is centering Black voices in our meetings. And what that is I say this at the beginning of the meeting, that you know, our NAACP is here to support the Black community and the community of color here in Humboldt. And to do that well, we need to make sure we're centering Black voices when we come together. And therefore what that means is when we open up for discussion or comment, I will be, because I'm a facilitator, I will be calling on Black people and people of color first, and then everyone else. And I think that's important in several ways. I think that helps keep us focused on why we're here. And we're here to support Black folks and people of color in this community. I also think it's a really good exercise for new Black people who come into this space and go, oh, there's a lot of white people, to hear me make that statement and hear everyone go, okay. I think that could be a very new experience. And I also think it's really good for white folks to know what it feels like to do that. That is an important exercise. It's not always appropriate for you to be talking and telling us what you think and how it should be done and what mistakes have been made and how you can do it better. So it's also a nice exercise for people whose voices are encouraged to learn that skill of holding back and listening to these other voices and, you know, noticing how different they are. We did this at our film on Saturday. It ran through my mind. It's like, oh, I've never done this at a public event. I think I'll try. So I said at the beginning, this is what we do at our meetings. This is what we're gonna try today. And we had over 50 people. Most were not members of the NAACP, so they hadn't heard this before. And it was phenomenal. It was better than good. Dr. Johnson, who was facilitating, called on people, which I've never done before in that format. He, instead of letting people ask questions, he called on people. So he called on Black folks, which he knew them all, and asked them questions about the film and had them speak. And happening was there was this whole wonderful layer of knowledge from listening to the film and from having lived a life that was shared with the broader community that I've never seen before in our community discussions. It was really great. Roz, were you there? Yeah. Unmute and say something, friend. A few people that were here at that event that were here, and it was really, what was your experience? Because I've never seen that before.
I was privileged to be there. I was fascinated and moved by people's personal experiences. Of course, the movie I Am Not Your Negro was gut-wrenching, and I was happy just to sit quietly and listen. It was really appropriate. So thanks.
Yeah, it was really, it added a whole new layer of experience of the film and how it impacts people's lives. We're going to do that again. I was just really surprised at how well it went. Yeah. Any other questions, my friend? Are we good?
I think we're good.
Okay.
There were some questions I was just trying to go back, and there are a lot of questions of how can we support Black families? What is, you know, and you have touched on that, and I think people are really wanting to know, you know, what we can do.
What we can do. Okay, things to do. Also, there is, well, I know I keep saying join the NAACP, and part of it is because we are very good at connecting with all these other projects. Like, there's one of our members brought to us this postcard campaign. It was started in North Carolina because there were so many Black people in North Carolina that had been removed from the voting rosters, that that was the place that the North Carolina NAACP focused on. So it's a postcard writing campaign. So you get postcards, you get labels to stick on the postcards, and then you're given a script, but it's in your own hand. And that's what makes people read it. And it has it allows people to access, Black folks to access, to make sure they are on the list to be able to vote, to get information on COVID, because it is impacting our community intensely. There's something else that I can't remember. But simply doing that activity, which you could do at home in the evening by yourself if you wanted to, is a huge way to help get people to vote. And they're not asking you to vote a certain way, they just want you to have the ability to vote. So things like that are available. Also, we've partnered with Alice Burney Elementary School, and one of our members took it upon himself. They have enough food to give to families, you know, the cook school lunches. What they were finding was that there wasn't a lot of fresh produce that was available to families. So one of our members connected with some farms, and now we've got these donations of all these fruits and vegetables, but we got to pick them up, get them to the school, bag them, and then hand them out. Well, people can do that, you know, and you can just do part of it. If you don't want to be there present with people handing them bags, you can be in the back, you know, putting the vegetables in the bag, or you can go pick them up and bring them to the school. There's a lot of opportunities to do direct service. We're one of those places where there's a lot of opportunities. So with that, you could also just call Alice Burney and say, hey, my name is blah, blah, I want to be of service. We chose that school because it is it's got a high percentage of people of color within that school. And just say, you know, how can I be of service? There's lots of opportunities.
I think Joyce, you had your hand up. Did you have a question? You have to unmute yourself.
I did, but I see that Julie Fulkerson just put the information on chat about the fact that North Carolina and Arizona have now been completed on that postcard campaign, and now we're on to Texas. And she also gave the name of the person to contact about that campaign.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Look at you go. You don't even need me here, people. Excellent. Many brains. I love getting together, because if I don't know, you know, or you know someone who knows, and then things get done. Okay, Jan, I want to make sure everyone else has a turn first, because you had a turn, sister. Is there anyone else, Kim?
I don't see any other hands. It just says we want to make sure we thank you for being here too. And
thank you.
That's not a problem. We'll do that. My question is, you have any concerns about local voter suppression because of the news on the radio and television and continuously, and ads and Facebook and things like that, and about the tally that we do every year of numbers of
census
people. The census, yeah. Thank you. I lost the word.
I definitely have concerns about the census, because our president is constantly creating fear. And if people don't feel safe, they're not gonna acknowledge their presence. There's another, okay, I'm jumping a little bit. There's another opportunity. So there's a fantastic organization named Centro del Pueblo. If someone could write it in the chat. Wonderful organization. They are online. they had a GoFundMe. They were trying to raise $11,000 to provide support to undocumented families because they also lost their jobs with the pandemic, but they are not eligible for the support that a lot of people got. And they're still our community members, and they're still here, and they still have families. So, you know, that's another way to contribute. You know, our NAACP was actually able to make a substantial contribution to that. So, as I said, we're focused first on the Black community, and from there we go out to people of color, and then further out. That was another thing. Sorry, this is how my mind works. When we're talking about the number of Black people in this community, I don't know who that 1,600, which I'm sure is a good rough number. You know, it also has to do with how you identify yourself. When my husband is white and Jewish, and I'm Black and became Jewish, I converted, not because of him, and we have 2 sons. Well, our sons identify as Black and Jewish. Okay, if you have a white parent and a Black parent, how do you identify? Not everyone identifies as Black. So where are they gonna fall when you start charting and graphing people? You know, that's a real issue. I went to a president's conference for the NAACP for the state, and our president is an extraordinary woman, and you are not confused when she says something to you. And as we're leaving the room, she says, you know, make sure, she was talking about this population of children who have a Black parent and a non-Black parent. And she's like, make sure these people are identifying with Black. And I remember going, not me, sister. It's like, I'm not telling people who they are. I think that is extraordinarily disrespectful. That is a family's decision, how they identify. Yeah, so and it was a decision that my husband and I made that we would identify as a Black and Jewish family, and our sons are men now, so they will, you know, do what they do. But as far as what we gave them, that's what we gave them. And I ran a little long because it's 1:29. I want to thank you. This was so much fun. I really love this way of sharing information, just kind of giving you some and then answering questions. Yeah, if it's helpful for me to come back and talk about something else, I would love to. I put my contact information in the chat box. Kim, can you let people know how to save the chat? Someone did ask that. You're welcome, friend.
Yes, it's and I think it's been answered a couple times in the, if you have the chat box open, there's 3 little dots. If you click on those little dots, the very first option is to save the chat. But I will also copy and paste and send that information with all the links and all the different resources. I will copy that and send that out to everybody who RSVP'd for this presentation.
Cool. Thank you. Thank
And
you.
I want to thank you so very much, Sharrone, for participating and doing such a great job. You're obviously very comfortable with this. You're very, very thoughtful and have given us a tremendous amount of great information. We've gotten great comments and questions from everyone. So I want to thank everyone for attending.